Welcome for joining us during this other episode in the Qualogy Tech series with our guest speaker, Jos Nijhoff. He's going to talk about the 10 things you should know about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We are aiming to finish this around 5. If you have questions, please ask them in the questions and answers section of the screen. And in the end, if we have available time, we will address those questions, and otherwise I will pass them on to Jos, and he can address them with you personally. With no further ado, I would like to give the floor to Jos.
Thank you, Leon. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening in. So I'll get going. I'll start the presentation. Let me just give me a second to start the presenter mode. Here we are. Can everyone see my title slide?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, this is a bit of a container title. There's lots of things to talk about. I found it very hard not to talk about things, to make a nice flowing presentation with just 10 things. So you will have to count the 10 things yourself, but I will just start going. Just a little bit about me. I'm an eBusiness Suite and Fusion Middleware DBA infrastructure, Oracle infrastructure background. I've been in consulting for a long time, as many people would know. And I've worked at Qualogy. I'm a Qualogyian. I've worked at Qualogy for 7 years, and now I'm working at Oracle as a pre-sales. I've worked at Oracle Digital in Amsterdam, and most recently I'm working in the Dutch Tech Cloud pre-sales team. So this is all about technology cloud, not about apps, not about SaaS. And so for clarity, I will talk about Oracle Cloud, but I will talk about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and not about SaaS. I'm sorry to disappoint it, but I think that was already clear from the abstract. And this is my agenda. I'll first start and introduce, make a quick introduction on some things that you need to know. And then we'll go and talk a bit about different topics. A quick session on a section about OCI for developers. That is not what I'm going to talk about today, but just to show that there's lots more to talk about when we're talking about OCI. Everything in IT can, and every aspect, or tak van sport in Dutch, can be found on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And but I've picked a few due to the time, of course, and also the audience. I've picked a few topics that I think you found interesting. So it will be a bit database centric. Because that's my background, and also I think that's what the audience would like. But we can talk about a lot of things when you're running on. We're talking about Oracle's cloud infrastructure, and in the end, I will talk about some resources and some things. And that's the nice thing about cloud; you can find pretty much everything online if you just Google it or have a good URL. The times that you have to look in My Oracle Support are pretty much over. It's not that you don't need it anymore, but all your resources and everything on cloud, and not only for Oracle, is to be found online. That's very easy. And I'll also talk about some free stuff for professionals. That's always interesting for everyone as well. Okay, let's just get going quickly. Introducing Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So Oracle is a cloud company, and has been for a long time. We started with Oracle Cloud Applications, so software as a service, but since at least 5 years, since 2017, we have a really nice platform called Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is a second generation cloud. It's the newest cloud around, especially when you're talking about the hyperscaler, so the big cloud providers. So Oracle has brought something to the table. Of course, there were already other clouds, and I think you know the names: Amazon, AWS and Azure and some other ones, Google. But what we found is that the clouds were built for using different technologies and not for enterprise applications. So what first generation clouds generally lack is some things that are really important to enterprise applications, or which is also the classical user base for Oracle customers. For Oracle is ultra low latency networking, persistent connections to relational databases, and things like clustering and scale up architectures instead of scaling out. So that is something that Oracle brings to the table when we're talking about second generation cloud. Apart from having all the advantages like flexibility, capacity on demand, and flexible pricing, pay as you go, that is that are concepts that are applicable for cloud computing. Okay, so what is Oracle doing differently? Oracle has built the newest cloud around, and there's actually a few things that core technologies that have been implemented and that we are using. And I think you only need to, for the moment, focus on two of these, and that is Offbox Virtualization. So we're doing virtualization different from more traditional clouds, and also non-blocking networks. So that's really non-oversubscribed networks. So you can be you have some guaranteed I/O performance and bandwidth. Going a little bit deeper into that is when we're talking about what is different in Oracle Cloud is in first generation cloud, everything is done by the hypervisor. In a cloud, you have multi-tenancy, so you have lots of customers running on the same hardware. And one of the aspects, how you do that technically, as many people will probably know, but is that you use a hypervisor for that, and a hypervisor separates the compute. It divides the memory, but it also provides all the networking functions. So to separate all the network traffic from different people, from different customers, from different tenants. And there's a security management aspect to that as well. So what does Oracle Cloud do differently? We're using a newer technology for network virtualization, and that is called Offbox Virtualization. And what it does is the hypervisor pretty much on your compute or servers doesn't have to do anything about the network. That is completely taken out of the equation and is performed by separate hardware, a separate layer. And that gives better performance and stability, and also better isolation from other tenants. So it also has security advantages. And because also that is in separate hardware, the attack surface for hackers is a lot smaller. OCI has also dedicated resources. That's a side note to this, and better I/O and quality of service. And if you get one OCPU, which is one core, if you're using cores, one core is a dedicated core with 2 threads. Not in every cloud that is the same thing. And what helps with that is what this solves is the problem of the noisy neighbor. So if someone else kicks off a big workload while your batch is running in other clouds, you can have the problem that it impacts your because you're using the same hardware, and not everything is 100% separated from a usage point of view, because you're sharing CPUs or you're sharing I/O bandwidth. That problem in the Gen 2 cloud is much, much smaller. And customers really notice that. So just a bit of history, just to see, we're a new kid on the block. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure started in 2017, but and in March 2019, this was our presence, and the data centers, the regions where you could get Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And we thought that was pretty good already. We covered a lot of the earth already, but we are really seriously investing Oracle is really investing in cloud services. This is the new business for Oracle. This is the future. You can pretty much say we're betting the company on it. And so far we're doing pretty well. If you noticed the stock market recently, there was actually a spike in the stock price for one day of 15% when we presented the quarterly results. And why was it only one day? Well, the day after, we announced that we would purchase an American healthcare company, a very big healthcare company called Cerner, which costs a lot of money. So, and then the stock price was back to where it was. But this illustrates that we are doing quite well and we're growing very fast. We are now actually a hyperscaler, and even this picture, which was from the summer, is already outdated. So there's also cloud regions now in France and in Israel and in Johannesburg, for instance. These are still open dots here, but those have already opened. So we're opening cloud data centers around the world to offer local presence to customers, because that's what customers find really important. And also there's something new in this picture as well. As you can see little Windows colors here, Windows logo. And those are interconnect regions, because Oracle has also going fully for a multi-cloud strategy. And we are partnering with Azure in many places that you can see. So that's for Europe, that's London, Amsterdam, and Frankfurt, where you can have a dedicated interconnect, and you also have a partnering of the cloud support organizations that are working together. And that is called the Azure Interconnect and the Azure Partnership. Because Azure and Microsoft and Oracle are rather complementary in their services, this works very well, and it's a win-win-win situation for Microsoft, for Oracle, and for the customers. And this is also what big customers have been asking for a long time. Okay, so just some examples of global companies that have adopted Oracle Cloud Infrastructure from all kinds of industries. Well, just to make it a bit more tangible for us, these are some Dutch names, and one German name, Deutsche Bank, which is also a very recent one and a very big name, just to make it more tangible. And we have also some zorgverzekeraars, healthcare in the Netherlands, and Eneco, and also a very nice example is Sunqueen, which is especially with the COVID epidemic, they could scale very rapidly to meet a very high demand all of a sudden. It's for blood testing due to COVID. And there's also a very big scientific company, or it's more of a foundation. It's the CERN, that's the nuclear research in Switzerland, but that's a European endeavor, of course, so I'm listing it here as well. Okay, let's go and see another big customer that is probably more familiar to you, or at least to me. It's one of my, during the COVID pandemic, I've been working at home all the time, and pretty much the only amusement I had, apart from my kids, is watching Formula 1. And lo and behold, Oracle has never been much of a sponsor of sports, and never been so visible in the public view. But Oracle has, since last year, January, has sponsored Red Bull Racing, and we all know what happened to Max Verstappen. He actually pulled it off and made, after a very thrilling season, made it to be a world champion. And what we can also say is that Oracle has even expanded this partnership, and Oracle is, as of last week, the primary sponsor of this team. So now it's called Oracle Red Bull Racing. So what does that mean for Oracle Cloud? Well, actually, Red Bull Racing is a big customer of Oracle Cloud and is also heavily using it for very advanced big data analysis. As you can imagine, you know, what the Formula 1 has become also like a race in in data analysis and to determine the best race strategy in real time, and doing a lot of simulations on with all the data that is coming in to try and predict and find the best options, when to do a pit stop, when to change tires, tire wear, and lots of other things. And that's what they're doing with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure now, and they're even expanding that. And what does it? And actually, we can say, and they're actually saying, if you can find it in the news, that they have been helped enormously by Oracle's cloud technology in making the best decisions and doing. And actually, Red Bull Racing has been doing quite well in race strategy for most of the races. Okay, so just to stress, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is not just infrastructure, infrastructure as a service. So compute on demand, storage on demand, and networking on demand. That's just hard infrastructure, but there's a lot of platform services as well for all these, and you can actually find any topic. You have a modern service that helps you a lot in implementing and saving you work, whether it's application development, integration, containers, or something completely different like analytics and BI, or even machine learning and other topics. And on top of that, of course, we also have our own SaaS applications, which are also running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. All our internal systems are now running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And of course, you can also run your custom applications on there as well. And to make it a bit more, oh dear, this is an animation. Let's just stop that. If we make it a bit more technical, and we have a technical audience, I have an even more complete picture of all the services. So I'm going to talk about databases a lot in this presentation, but don't forget there's actually a lot more to be found, and also on managing your cloud deployments and having all the administration and the cost controls. Also a lot of things about managing or about monitoring, and all the things you need and that you can find in other clouds. We have those services as well, and we have a very good representation. And the good thing about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, on the other hand, is also that this is not completely swamped with services. So we actually, it's quite you can easily have a pretty good overview of all the things that we have. Still, it's not too complicated yet. So let's talk about OCI for developers just quickly. Just if you're interested in these topics and you're more of a developer oriented person, just very quickly, we have cloud native. For cloud native applications, we have Oracle Kubernetes Engine, a new DevOps service, and of course, events and functions. If you really want to leave all the infrastructure behind as a developer, you can do completely without infrastructure, and everything is serverless, as we call it. Of course, that still runs on a Kubernetes environment in the background, but it's something you don't see and you don't have to manage. It's actually, you pay for running a process for the compute that it uses and for the data that it processes. Integration, the integration cloud service for application integration, and we have two main services. This is just a quick grab from the complete portfolio, but we also have a data integration and Golden Gate. Let's just say also on the data services, big data, we have a lot of very advanced services, and especially the data science platform is quite popular these days because it allows you to do things like you do it on your own laptop, but in a collaborative way with, but it still allows you, it's not a harness or what we call but it allows a lot of freedom to use the machine learning, on your laptop and the command line in a more organized way, in a team fashion, in collaborative fashion. Okay, well, there's lots more here. Low code, we have a Visual Builder Studio Application Express, of course, and Digital Assistant. And well, there's lots of things to talk about. Also on the database side, data management, we have not only the Oracle database, but also a very nice managed service for MySQL, and there is machine learning in the database. Okay, well, that's all that I can tell about developer. One thing to remember if we're talking about Oracle database and Oracle database services in the cloud is that there is a different strategy, especially with Amazon, but in general, a lot of cloud providers provide database types for every type of data function. They have a different database and you have to learn new skills. Oracle is more of in the position of the philosophy traditionally, but it fits very well as well that we have a converged database, and all those topics and all those new ways of using and processing and storing data are integrated into the Oracle database, which is a converged database where you only have to learn one set of skill sets. Of course, if you're talking about JSON documents, things are a bit different than when you're doing machine learning on the database or graph. Of course, those are still separate topics with specialism, but the general skill set that you can use is the Oracle database skill set, and that helps a lot and saves also a lot of problems. Okay, let's move to database cloud service now. I'd like to talk a little bit about database cloud service and what it is and what's new. But before I do that, there's also something to know, and that's another thing to learn about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, is that, of course, Oracle runs best on Oracle, and that is not some vague marketing or just some popular things, but if you want to run the Oracle database in the cloud, and you want to run it on another cloud, so say Azure or AWS, then let's see, where's my mouse? Then you don't have support for all of the Oracle database features like real application clusters and multi-tenant, and let alone the autonomous database. There's my mouse again. And that is something to remember if you choose something, if you choose a cloud to run your database in. Also, because it is newer and we have this better performance characteristics, you also have not only look at cost, but cost over performance is very advantageous on OCI. And let's not forget, if you're talking about licenses on AWS and Azure, you can, if you want to run the Oracle database there, you can, but as I said, you don't have the complete options. Actually, it's quite limited. And what is more important, you're paying twice the number of licenses compared to Oracle Cloud. And Google Cloud and other clouds are not even authorized cloud environments for the Oracle database. So also you have a lot more tools. We provide a lot of tools for running the database and using it and migrating it. And you also get some extras like data safe, which is a data security in the cloud, where you can manage the security, like all the privileges in your schemas, and the complete also encryption, data encryption. We have compartments, which is an identity management concepts to separate things within your cloud and keep the things separate, and security zones, which where we advise you and you can have zones where you can have the tightest security, and that all comes at no extra charge. So, but let's go to the technical stuff. So we have a complete portfolio of database on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. You can also do all of this yourself if you choose infrastructure as a service, just to compute the storage and the networking. You can build your own, like you do on premise, and you can install it yourself. Well, that's not that doesn't have a lot of added value. But what is more interesting is, of course, it gives you a lot of control, but it doesn't give you it doesn't help you save time and costs and make life easier. The database cloud service is the first platform as a service option, and then you can also have Oracle Exadata and autonomous database. And the autonomous database is something I will talk about also, where you have a fully managed database which is the same Oracle database as you know, but it is almost it's managed as a SaaS almost. It's auto tuning, auto scaling, patching is done for you, and there's a lot of things that you don't have to worry about anymore. When it makes life for a DBA a bit boring. But let's go to the database cloud service first. So you can get the database cloud service fully for all the versions from 11.2, 12, 12c, 18c, 19c. And you can run it on a virtual machine in the cloud or on a bare metal host, what is just a native host running Linux, all for yourself. And the important thing about database cloud services, that's also why it's a platform services, is that you get a lot of work is taken away from you, is made easier through cloud automation and the flexibility, but also some integrated backup scheduling and a lot of lifecycle management actions like creating a database or a database system is done for you. Patching is, you have a patching wizard and that kind of thing. So that makes life a lot easier. Just a quick overview on sizing, you know, how big can a system become. You can, on a virtual machine, you can have up to 24 cores, and on bare metal even 52, because that's a dedicated host for you. You can have up to 320 gigabytes of memory on virtual machine. So these are some raw characteristics on what is possible. And how much you cannot get up to 40 or 50 terabytes of data storage. So you can get a really big database on this. Well, you can also have real application clusters, which is and data guard. And the nice thing about it, data guard is fully automated. So it's not so hard to set up anymore. And just one more important aspect is, of course, if you're running databases, you're really interested in, and you need some dedicated performance, some good I/O, and you want to know how much performance from data retrieval from the storage you can get. And here is a nice overview for your reference on how many I/O operations and how much throughput you can get for different shapes. These are how many cores you're using and how much memory you have. So you can start very small with 1 core, and you can go up to 24 cores in our generation 2 hardware. So that's actually Oracle X7, Sun X7 servers. But and we also have X9 servers, which are even faster these days. That's not on this slide anymore. Just it's also to explain why you would even choose database cloud service instead of doing it all yourself. And that is, of course, doing all of it yourself is fun, but it also takes a lot of time and work. And of course, efficiency is becoming more and more important, and cloud can help you do that. So you can, the nice thing about all these cloud services is that you have online, you can have scaling and flexibility in what you need and what you use, and you can adjust. And you can also have, it makes life a lot easier. For instance, the patching wizard, you have automatic backup and recovery all through a simple wizard in the cloud console. So it's a graphical environment. But if you still want to use the command line interface, it's still the same old database as you were used to on a virtual machine or on a native Linux host, a bare metal host. And you can even you can log in as the Oracle user, you can log in as the grid user for a grid infrastructure if you're running a cluster, a rack cluster. And you can even log in as root and change things if you really need to. So you still have a lot of freedom, and you can use all the command line stuff that you're used to. But you also have a lot of things are made a lot easier in the meantime as well, and you can do things in a graphical way, so you can manage more databases in the same time. So what's something that is new? What was missing up till now? Maybe a bit surprising, but if you're using a multi-tenant database and you're using container databases with multiple pluggable databases in it, you could only do that through the command line interface. So it was quite possible to do that on database cloud service, but only through the command line, and then there was no graphical environment with guided flows for that. And that is new since this summer. It was released in July, and I've put some references on it. There's also a nice video. And that is, you can do lifecycle management and create pluggable databases from the console, from the cloud console, and also do all the lifecycle management. This is what it looks like. For instance, creating a pluggable database goes like this. So this also illustrates very nicely what Oracle Cloud looks like and what the interface looks like. If you're used to cloud interfaces and cloud consoles, web consoles in your browser, everything is done through the browser in a graphical environment. Although you can also log in on the host, on the Linux host, and do things on the command line. A lot of things you can address from here. All the lifecycle management, you can have automatic backups and create databases, and also create now pluggable databases. Let's see. And here's another one. Also, cloning a pluggable database or stopping one. Lifecycle management, creating a new one here is made very easy. And that's a nice new feature, I think, that was missing from database cloud service. Let's just see, how are we doing with the time here? Yeah, so, well, this is database cloud service, and you'll have a very good performance with database cloud service due to the nature of the underlying storage, which is block volume storage that you can get on all clouds, but Oracle Cloud has a very good one. And also, but there might be a reason why you would still use infrastructure as a service and do all this stuff yourself, like you're used to, because if you really want a lot of I/O, you can get even more than in database cloud services, and that is because we also have flexible I/O for block storage, it gets a bit technical, but what this is about is that a common issue with cloud is, and it's not only for databases, but it's for everything that is I/O intensive, which applies to databases naturally, is that you, in a lot of clouds, and we hear this a lot from Azure customers, is that they're over provisioning their block storage volume. So they're actually allocating a lot more and paying for a lot more gigabytes than they actually need to store their data, just to get the required I/O bandwidth, the I/O performance, actually the performance of just processing the data. And that's because their IOPS and the throughput are directly related, and they're actually, usually this is linear, and they're strongly coupled to the volume size. So if you just want more performance, you need to put more gigabytes in and pay for that. Oracle has a very nice solution for that. That's also something rather new in our cloud. And that is, so how are we doing with the time, folks? Let's just see. Oh, we're doing quite well. We have a slider for this. So Oracle Cloud Infrastructure completely separates the size of the storage and the performance that you get with it. And we actually have a nice slider for that. You can choose for lower cost if you think, oh, I don't need much I/O bandwidth here. Usually and normally by default, it's set to balanced, which is a balance of cost and performance. And you can also see in the slider exactly what you're going to get. And since this has been available since 2019, fall of 2019. Now in June, we have a newer version of this, which is more elaborate. We have an enhanced slider and we have ultra high performance. So you can actually get a lot more IOPS and throughput in megabytes per second if you really want to. And that is also done with the touch of a button. And you can also do this online on the fly. So if you think, oh, I need a lot of IO performance here, right now. Then you can change that and you can set it back later on. Just to see, you can also get so you can also immediately see what you can expect in terms of IOPS and throughput, and you can, if I just run the animation here, you can see you can put it higher and higher, and you can also set it back. And you can do that on the fly. It's pretty responsive, so within a few seconds you will also get this new throughput, and you can go up to 1800 megabytes per second. Of course, it still depends on the volume size. So if you increase the volume size, it gets better. That's still the rule, but you can also independently set this. A nice feature, and that's also. And while we're at it, that's not only for block volume storage, for the I/O performance, for the sizing, but you can also size and actually choose your compute, your VMs on the fly, and we don't have fixed shapes anymore for Intel and also for AMD and ARM shapes. If you're into infrastructure as a service, you can get all of these shapes now, what we call with flexible compute. And it means that you can have a slider and you can just choose. You don't have fixed sizes where you have like t-shirt sizes, like small, medium, large, extra large, where the number of CPUs and memory are pretty much going hand in hand and are coupled. You can say, oh, I need a lot of CPUs and I don't need that much memory, or the other way around. So you can actually customize this completely to what you want to do on those servers, and those servers can run Linux, but they can also run Windows if you want to. Okay. Now, going back to the databases, and now this is really something I think you should at least have heard of, and that's why I'm introducing it, is the concept of the autonomous database. Oracle has put a lot of work for a long time in improving the database management and putting functions in to help you and to take away work like automatic memory management and other things. And we haven't stopped there. There is something called machine learning these days, and it is getting, and that means that actually we have built what I call a robotic database. The official term is autonomous database because it can pretty much run on its own. But a good analogy or a good idea is that it's running as a robot is running your database. So if we have DBAs in the audience, I apologize, but this can get a bit scary. It doesn't mean that DBAs get completely obsolete, but there is a lot of, I think, boring work if you compare it to. I'll tell that in a minute. We have here the autonomous database, and there's a database for analytics, OLAP, yeah, and there's one for transaction processing, and there is even more, and I'll show you that in a minute. Where your database, you have a fully managed database environment where you don't have to do a lot of things, of the traditional things for the database. And these things, this is a good slide that summarizes, what DBAs probably all know is DBA work is complex work, and there's a lot of things to do, and it actually can take you away from the actual data management and the actual work of modeling your data and helping developers getting the best out of the database. And these are the things, it's complex administration, security vulnerabilities that need to be patched. So there's a lot of work on patching. It's probably not the most interesting. And if you compare it to a car, actually, with the autonomous database, you don't have to be changing the oil and doing all those manual things anymore and get your hands dirty, because the database will actually do it for you. And for some DBAs, when I talk about that, they think it's impossible to do. It's not It's not possible. It's not. But you think about a Tesla, and actually a Tesla can already park itself and can do a lot of things by itself already. It's not always safe, so some accidents happen. But yeah, humans make a lot more accidents actually than Teslas do. So and that's the same for the database. So if you look at the autonomous database, it's a database that does where the provisioning is done for you. Configuration is automatic. You also, your data encryption is automatic, and all the online patching, and all the patching is done online. And you can also get completely elastic scaling, and not only scaling up, but also scaling down. And tuning is also done by machine learning, actually, by robots. And you can think of the cost optimizer doing a lot of work. And if you take that to a few levels next, then you actually get this. And a lot of DBAs think that it is impossible, but it's been here for 2-3 years already, and a lot of customers are already using it. So what is the autonomous database? Actually, to keep it simple and to put it simple, it's running on an Exadata, and it's a pluggable database running on a RAC cluster. So that's also something to remember. If you're running a database, you can start very small, an autonomous database, and it's very easy to use. You can even use your standard edition license to run an autonomous database, an autonomous transaction database. But it runs on Exadata. It's complete database automation. There's still lots of work to do, and you still need to have DBA skills to know what's going on. But a lot of work is taken away from you, and it's made easier by machine learning and data center operation. So, and what kind of database flavors do we have these days? Well, there's one for OLTP. It's called the Autonomous Transaction Processing Database. There's one for analytics. That's the traditional division in database land for online transaction processing, and also for analytics. That's the autonomous data warehouse. And there's some new flavors as well. You know, JSON documents and document format for data has been quite popular, and we also have an autonomous database for that. So that's actually a database, a hands-off database, where you don't have to do a lot of things anymore to manage it. And there's also an Application Express environment where you have Apex as a service, which is actually running on the autonomous database, and there will be a graph version as well. You know, Facebook has made graph very popular, and customers are asking for it. And also many hundreds of customers are using already the autonomous database. Also customers that don't have large IT departments, but still want to run the Oracle database. And it's very convenient for that. So how does that work? Creating an autonomous database is really quite simple. You choose a name, and you choose the type that I showed you. So you, for instance, you choose a data warehouse, a flavor database, which is tuned for data warehousing and for processing large numbers of queries. You choose a version. Well, the version is quite limited at this moment, but it's only 19C, but that will be changed in the future. And you can choose the number of CPUs and just the number of storage, the amount of storage, how big your database is going to be initially. And you can scale both of them online. The only thing you need as well is, of course, an Oracle database license. And the nice thing about cloud is you can use it, get it completely included in the price, or you can say, oh, I have some spare licenses and I'll bring my own license. And that is also quite okay. And that's the two options you have. And then you enter your work email address, and you get an email like, excuse me, like I'm showing you here. I did this last week, and it's that simple. And you can log into the database and have a managed environment where you can view performance, what's going on your database, and also you can do some lifecycle management. You can restore backups, you can clone it, all the things you do with the database. And patching is done for you. You can see when it's happening. when it's going to happen, but it's completely online and you don't notice it at all. And the nice thing about it, you get a listener and a listener configuration and a TNS name and a wallet, just like you're used to, because it's still the same database that you're used to. Okay, Patrick says that you can, on the always free tier, you can also choose the database version 21C, but it depends on the region. Okay, well, I was doing it in Amsterdam, so maybe it didn't work there. Just to see, what is the sizing? How big can a database get? What are the restrictions? Currently, the restrictions are you can size it online from 1 to a maximum of 120 OCPUs, which is Intel cores on an Exadata, and you can have 1 to 120 terabytes of Exadata storage, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be increased in the future, but that's what it is now. What does it look like? I already showed you a bit. It's a graphical environment just to give you also an impression on what working in the cloud means. And here you just put in the name and some things, and you can choose what you want. Just deciding on how much CPU to start with, and also whether to use auto scaling or not, and how much terabyte of storage you need. So now let's go to the really impressive part of this, which I still find a bit hard to believe, but you can actually do it. Is that you can scale it online without going down, without any downtime, so you don't need to take the database down. And you can even enable what I showed you here, OCPU auto scaling, so you can actually burst when a workload demands it, and you don't have to monitor it. It will actually notice it by itself when the load in time increases, that you need more OCPU, and you can scale up to 3 times the original size. So if you started with 2 OCPUs, it can automatically scale to 6. And what it will also do when it gets more quiet and the load is over, it will scale down again. And that's the most impressive thing. Also, the scaling down is, I think, is something that you really need to see and try for yourself. Okay, let's just go to the next slide. Now, something else is that I would like to show you and to impress or to point out is that you can really find a lot of things online about Oracle Cloud. And there is also something, if you're interested in architectures and also you want to get started and you want to get some ideas on your use case. For instance, you can get reference architectures, you can get fast start, where you can use infrastructure as code to quickly deploy some environments that you pre-assembled environments and predefined solutions. But really any topic that you can imagine can be found. Some ideas can be found in the architecture center, and a lot of solutions are there. So I really invite you to have a look and find something that matches your interest. For instance, the autonomous database, you can find some nice examples on deploying that from the architecture center, and some reference architectures for high availability, for instance, with also a load balancer and a complete network environment with where you put the database in a private networking environment, and you have also a public facing load balancer to make a really network secure environment. And so, but there's more than just that, and it's not all about the database. So you can go in any direction. I was going a bit fast, sorry. For instance, you can also find reference architectures for complete Oracle applications like eBusiness Suite or Integration Cloud and SOA, service-oriented architecture, which is a WebLogic integration project, a WebLogic integration-based product. And you can find a reference architecture on how you would run an environment and how you would deploy that in a networking environment on Oracle Cloud. And there's lots of references on how to do this, and also there is usually sample code for deploying this in a scripted way through Terraform. And there you also have completely different subjects just to show you also running .NET apps, Microsoft apps on Linux, on OCI using Kubernetes engine. There's a lot of explanation on that. And of course, there's also a data storage, a persistent Oracle data store in there. But you could also do it with MySQL if you wanted to. But here you have a database with RAG enabled, running, serving a pod on Kubernetes, a pod farm with .NET applications. And this goes for Oracle WebLogic Server as well. And there's also something called the Marketplace, where you can find a lot of predefined solutions. And there's also, if you want to go off the deep end and you're more interested in doing new stuff, for instance, DevOps and OCI functions, complete serverless things, and CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development, setting that up in a nice way. You can use the DevOps service and OCI functions as an example. And what I think is something you need to know about OCI as well is there is a graphical environment to do these designs yourself. And it's called the OKIT. It's the Oracle Kinetic Infrastructure Toolkit, or the OCI Designer Toolkit actually, which is a graphical environment that you can run on Docker on your laptop or something analogous. It's a browser-based application. It's drag and drop. You can design your own infrastructures and your own stuff and your own architectures in there. And what's the nice thing, you can actually deploy them as well. Straight away, you can actually deploy it to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure by just giving your credentials to the cloud subscription that you have. And it will actually deploy it using something called the OCI Resource Manager, which manages all the deploy jobs. And it is based on open source stuff, which is called Terraform, and it also supports Ansible. And it's integrated with GitHub, where you can also find a lot of examples. And you can even publish your own examples there as well. Now, that's not all. The OCI Designer Toolkit is even more useful, because if you're already built something on your Oracle Cloud in your environment, you can actually introspect it. And a lot of customers use this to actually make reports and to also clean up their environments, and to have a good view on what is all deployed, and also to create new environments from projects that they have already done. You can actually read from your cloud environment and read it into OKIT, and then do the so that's called introspection or discovery, and then you can modify that and deploy it somewhere else, or clone, replicate an environment. Very useful. So let's go to the OCI, always free stuff, always fun for everyone. And something very interesting is a lot of things can be found online are the Oracle Live Labs, especially, and not only for developers, but for all kinds of roles, application developers, but also DevOps engineers, data scientists, and DBAs, and have a look over there and see if there's an interesting workshop. Not all of them are free, but many of them are. And then you can do that at your own pace. And sometimes you can also get a live one where people are actually presenting it. You can find those invitations on LinkedIn as well. I sent out invitations for it as well. Let's just go on. And of course, you can also, if you think, oh, but Oracle Cloud, that probably costs a lot of money. Well, of course, it's not for free. If you compare it to other clouds, the prices are quite nice. But still, if you want to learn for yourself, you would like to have something like the developer license when you're downloading stuff from Oracle TechNet. And that is also here. That's called the free trial. And there's also something called the always free tier, a collection of services that even after the expiry of the trial will still remain active and can be used for free. What can you get? You can get an autonomous database, actually two. You can get 2 VMs with 1 GB of memory. You can get 100 bytes of storage, block storage, networking. You can get a load balancer, and you can try monitoring and things like that. Sorry, that's another one. There's also Apex for the people who like low-code development, Oracle application, Express in the cloud. And if you haven't looked at Apex for a while, I invite you to do so, because it's been revolutionized. The new version is quite spectacular, and there's a lot of functionality, and it can be combined very well and run on the autonomous database. That's a very nice combination. It's actually Apex as a service you can also get, is that you don't even see the database behind it anymore. Okay, if you want to see a lot more things, there's more free stuff, but I'll not go into detail on that. Here's a list. It's probably not complete anymore, because it's updated frequently. And something to finish with is that you can also get free training and free certification up to a point. I think it's expiring this week, but usually it gets extended. So you can get you can learn some skills, and you can choose it at your own pace, and you can actually get certified for Oracle Cloud for free. And usually, if it's finished, the free exams are finished by March, then you can wait till September, and it will probably be available again. But the learning itself is always, a lot of that is always free. And it's still available, even if the certification, if you will have to pay for it. So, and there is a lot of topics that you can find. This is just an example page. And the links are here on the slides. Actually, that is my presentation for today. So let's see if there are some questions.
Yes, there are. Jos, thank you very much for presenting this broad overview of our cloud infrastructure. I especially like the Oci Designer Toolkit. I was not aware of that it existed, but it looks very nice. There is a question that's from Melissa. It was asked when you presented about the global presence of the Oracle data centers. Can you give an example of how Azure Interconnect is being used?
Yeah. Well, I do have some slides about that, but let's do it because of time. Let's do it from the top of my head. Mm-hmm. So, of course, there's a lot of things where there's quite some examples where, like I said, Azure and OCI are complementary. Usually, Oracle is valued especially for data management and analytics. And that's the kind of things that you would see on Oracle Cloud. But you could actually, one of the scenarios is that you run your applications. That's probably a .NET stack or another Microsoft proprietary stack in Azure, and you'll actually have the databases and the data management in Oracle Cloud, and those are then tightly coupled through a private interconnect with a low latency and decent bandwidth, something you don't have to organize yourself, and that's a scenario. Let's see if I have a slide quickly for that. Are there any other